Hey guys, welcome back to the Zurich Review. I'm Karen and today I've got my super late December reading wrap-up for you. So it's been a while, and about this wrap-up I have actually filmed it once before, but something with my camera was wrong, and then like the footage was all blurry and stuff. So I had to film it again, and then I got really busy at work. So here I am in the middle of January doing my December wrap-up. But anyway, as always, my motto is better late than never. So let's just jump right into the books I read in December. I read a total of 6 books in December, which I'm very happy with. I have participated in the holiday adventure-a-thon, which I didn't quite manage to finish, but almost, and it still gave me that push of quite many books which I finished during that time. So, first book I want to talk about is A Street Cat Named Bob by James Bowen. This one I read for the holiday adventure-a-thon, was the first book I read for that one. And this is the story of a formerly homeless and guy who was also a drug addict, who he's got a home now, but he's still kind of in the streets trying to make some money. And then one day he finds this cat whom he names Bob. Bob is his stray, and yeah, so James just basically then takes the cat in, and then Bob just won't leave him alone anymore. At first he just wants to pamper him a little and then like put him back out on the streets, but Bob just won't leave James anymore. And this book is basically just a story about how this man and this cat became friends and how they like helped each other to get over their troubled pasts, so to say. The nice thing about this story is that it's a non-fiction book, so James Bowen is actually writing this story from his own experience. It's something that actually happens to him, and I think still today he's living a happy life with his lovely cat Bob. There's also a movie about this. I want to see that. I think it's really cute. But anyway, let's talk about the book. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, which is fine, I think. It's a very lovely story. It's nice to read. It's really like cute and nice, and a very hopeful story as well. It wasn't like I didn't give more stars to this book because the writing like suffered a little bit. There's parts which are quite repetitive, like he tells us something and then 5 pages later he tells us just the same thing again. And that way it's not like a brilliant piece of literature, but it's still a very nice and good book, and one that I'm happy to have read. So would recommend. 3 out of 5 stars for A Street Cat Named Bob. The next book I read was an audiobook called The Girl Who Saved Christmas by Haig. I read or listened to that one for the readathon as well, because I don't usually listen to like holiday themed stories, but this one was nice. I'd say it's a children's story about a girl whose mother died, and then she has to go to this, it's not an orphanage, it's kind of a working house where she just has to go to work, and it's really not a nice place. But then Santa comes and like helps her out and stuff. That's the story of it, and it's very cute. I enjoyed listening to it. I think I enjoyed it more because it was an audiobook, because it was read by Rufus Beck, who is my favorite ever German audiobook reader. Other than that, it's not brilliant, but it's cute and nice and a lovely thing to listen to during Christmas. And I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Next up is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. That's a book I've been wanting to read for a long time, because, you know, it's being talked about all over BookTube and just everywhere, in every bookish community I know. It's been talked about quite widely and liked by most of the people, also by me. I did like this book. In case you don't know, it follows 2 boys, apparently Aristotle and Dante, who are both, if you want to say so, a little bit of like outcasts, but then they become friends, even though they're really, at the beginning they're really different. Like Ari is this kind of very introverted person who doesn't really talk to people, doesn't have many friends. At one point Ari says, "Oh well, my mom has more friends than me, that's really sad." And the other boy is Dante, who is like the complete opposite. He's a very open-minded guy who talks to people, who has a very open and caring family, and these two boys, they like collide and become friends in spite of their differences, and they also become a little bit more than friends during the course of the story. So I'm not going to tell you more because I don't want to spoil it, just to say it's a very lovely story, and it's also something that deals a little bit with issues like racism, because these two boys, they're both Mexican. They live in the US anyway, and basically it's just a coming of age story which is told from Ari's perspective, and Ari especially really grows during the story, which is what I liked about it a lot. Like, as I said in the beginning, he's this rather weird, slightly aggressive boy, but then he comes to terms with who he is and also with his sexuality, and in the end he's really able to like accept himself and accept whom he loves. And I think it's very powerful, especially because it's like teenage characters, because a lot of teenagers really do struggle with these kinds of things, and that's why I just think it's a really important book. The representation I find very good, and that's why I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. It's also just a very, like, if you're still wondering if you should read it, yes you should, because it's a very quick read. There's like plenty of dialogue and it moves really fast, and you can easily read it like in 2 days. Next up, I've got The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzi Lee. This was also a 4-star read for me. Even though I was a bit skeptical, because it's a historical fiction, which is something I don't usually read so much, but this one was done very well, and it's young adult, so it was still kind of up my alley, even though I'm not a huge historical fiction reader. So this book, just like Aristotle and Dante, follows mainly 2 boys, Monty and Percy, and also Monty's sister Felicity. And it is set in, I don't know, maybe 17th century England, where Monty is the son of a very rich family, but he doesn't really know how to behave like a gentleman, so his dad sends him away for a year to do the Grand Tour of Europe, which apparently is something that young rich people at that age did. And he's sent away on this journey just to have a cultural experience, but the father obviously hopes that Monty will grow up during this year and then return as a gentleman whom he can give his estate to. However, Monty has different ideas, and he also has secret feelings for his friend Percy, who also comes with him on this journey. And Percy is black, and that is like a very important issue in this book, because in 17th century England, black people were usually in England like slaves or servants. And while they travel, people keep thinking that Percy is actually the servant of Monty and Felicity. And like the romance between these two is especially interesting, not only because it's a gay romance, but also because it's like a interracial romance during that time, which really wasn't normal, and it also wasn't easy because it just wasn't socially accepted. And then there's of course the whole plot, which is just awesome and nice and very entertaining and funny. Like on this trip, lots of things happens. At one point, Monty's caught running naked through some kind of royal court thing, and they're highwaymen. They get robbed. They get into the hands of pirates, and it's this really kind of adventure style novel. But it also has this deeper level of stuff to think about, like the gay romance between these 2 main characters. But also Felicity is a very interesting character, because she's, well, not because she's female, but she's a female at that time who was very much interested in medicine, but she wasn't allowed to go and study that, so she just like read a lot of books for herself, and she she's just kind of fighting the restraints of this society which forbids her to become like a doctor or something, and she just goes on herself and teaches her to learn the stuff she wants to learn, which is great. And another thing which is represented in this book is epilepsy. Percy has got epilepsy, and at the time when this is set, that was a disease that was not studied well, and people kept thinking that it's got something to do with like being possessed by demons and this kind of stuff, and people with epilepsy were usually like outcasts, and society wouldn't really accept them or want to be around them simply because they didn't understand this disease. So this book is brilliant concerning representation, but it's also just a very cool and amusing, entertaining story, which is absolutely worth reading. Even though it looks rather big, it's young adult, it's got like pretty huge font, and you can get through it pretty quickly. So there's no excuse not to read it. Also, there's the sequel coming out, which I think is called the something about petticoats. I don't know. I just know that the second book, which is coming soon, will be from Felicity's perspective, and I'm very excited about that because I like Felicity, and as I said, she's like this strong female character who wants to have the same rights as men, and it can only get even better. We're getting into my 5-star reads, first of which was The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I love this book. I have no idea why I haven't read it any sooner, because it was so hyped, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, and for some reason I just never read it, but now I did, and I loved it so much. It's about this boy Christopher who's got Asperger's syndrome, and on the surface it's a murder mystery novel, meaning that Christopher, one day he finds the dog of his neighbor dead, and he wants to find out who killed this dog. So that's like the frame narrative, but if you have a closer look, it's not really about that. It's more about how Christopher learns to live with his Asperger's syndrome, how the people around him learn to deal with it, and how he like grows stronger and more confident through this like murder investigation, where he takes the lead, and he just sets himself this goal of finding out who killed the dog, and through that he becomes stronger and more self-confident, and it's just a beautiful story. Yeah. Personally, I can't really talk about the representation of Asperger's because I have absolutely no clue about that. But throughout the book, you're like inside Christopher's head, and I have a feeling that it is described really well, because you know, it's sometimes he says stuff like, well, I know how to calculate prime number XYZ, but I have no idea how to read people's faces. And I do think, like, what I do know about Asperger's syndrome is makes sense compared to this, and I think the representation is well, and also it's very easy to like step into his shoes and see the world from his perspective. This is really well done in the book, so absolute 5-star read for me. And last but not least, I have 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I might have talked about this book before. This one was a huge surprise to me because I didn't really know much about what it would be about or anything, but I just loved it so much, even though it's really, really sad, but it's also probably one of the best books I've ever read. So it is about 2 women who live in Afghanistan during the war, and they're both married to the same man. So like their families, they get married away to that same man, and at the beginning they really don't like each other, but soon enough they realize that in order to survive the war and in order to survive their violent husband, they have to like come together and be strong for each other, which is just what they do. It's just an absolutely beautiful story. Like it's harsh, like in Afghanistan at that time, people were, or especially women, they had no rights. They were, as I said, just married away to whoever. They couldn't even go out of the house alone. And I think it's just extreme to see what kind of stuff happens or happened to women like not so long ago, and I think it's just very important to read about these things. And in 1,000 Splendid Suns, it's all just really well done. What I do find remarkable is that Khaled Hosseini, the author, is a man, because I don't always like women written by men, but he did a really great job, because both the main characters, Mariam and Layla, they're both very believable and authentic women, I believe, which is, among others, the reason why I gave this book 5 stars, and I will recommend it to everyone. As I said, it's sad and it's kind of hard to read about these kinds of things, but it's just something that we need to know. And in the end, like, this friendship or the love that these women have for each other is stronger than anything, and I think that is the really beautiful thing about this story. Alright, so that was my December reading wrap up. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll be back soon. Bye!